Ghosts don't negotiate, he chuckled into the mic, the kind of laugh that rolls out of a man who's never been told no. The room echoed with polite sycophant claps, the same kind that sound like wet shoes on tile. A red-faced billionaire in a 12-case suit, drunk on his own headlines, grinning for the cameras like he'd just bought God's clearance rack. I watched from the stream's back end. No name, no login, just a terminal window and a VPN that doesn't exist. He stood under my company's new banner, shaking hands, basking in the spotlight of a $375 million acquisition he thought he understood. The last founder's just a ghost in the system now, he said, smug as a frat boy who thinks foreplay is optional. No records, no input, no relevance. We're clearing out the dead weight. He held up a signed agreement like a trophy. Everyone laughed. I didn't. That phrase, ghost in the system, wasn't poetic. It was legal. And by design. My design. By the way, if you're listening and haven't already subscribed, do us a small favor. Click the subscribe button and like the video. It takes half a second, and it keeps stories like this one alive. Trust me, the best part is still coming. I wasn't there because I wasn't supposed to be. Not on paper, not on Slack, not even in the dusty footnotes of the HR database. No exit interview, no corporate farewell. Just an empty chair and an auto-reply that never expired. 3 years ago, I asked for exactly that. A clean, vanishing act. I offered no resistance, asked for no severance. Just a rider. One no one read. I remember the boardroom the day I left, how quiet it was. The CEO at the time, a bean counter with a receding gum line, didn't even ask why I wanted out. He was too busy rebranding culture as catered lunches and treadmill desks. If you don't want equity, he shrugged, we'll just call it closure. What they didn't understand is that I wasn't leaving. I was planting a tripwire. The new owner, Carter Raymond, tech bro turned vulture capital mascot, walked into this acquisition like it was a frat hazing. Pop champagne, make speeches, fire the old guard, rename a few products after Greek gods. The usual MBA cosplay. He thought he was buying a company. He didn't realize he was walking into a locked vault with someone else holding the key. The asset he bragged about, the one that accounted for nearly half the valuation, wasn't a product. It was an engine, a proprietary encryption framework baked so deep into the infrastructure it might as well have been marrow. They called it Echo Frame. They called it autonomous. They called it legacy. What they never called it was mine. But it was, still is. He didn't see the manila folder passed across the table during closing, didn't hear my agent's calm voice asking, "Before we finalize, would you like to review the Rider 17 clause tied to asset 03B47? He laughed, out loud. "We've got lawyers for that." His lawyer didn't laugh. He stared like a man who'd just realized the blueprint for his mansion was scribbled in someone else's blood. His smile sank into his chest as he turned the page and read line 12. Then line 13. Then line 17. I was never erased. I was embedded. And now the ink was dry, which meant so was the trigger. But I didn't need to be in that room to feel the temperature drop. I've seen this kind of arrogance before. Men so high off power, they forget how contracts work. They confuse silence with surrender. They forget that shadows stretch longest just before lights go out. So let him laugh. Let him grandstand and toast and cut the ribbon on his little empire. Let him call me a ghost. I didn't haunt the system. I wrote it. 3 years ago, I walked into HR carrying nothing but a plain manila envelope and a black coffee with too much sugar. No tears, no dramatic monologue, no cake in the break room. Just a quiet printout and a request. Process it today, no goodbyes, no emails, no fuss. I'd spent 13 years in that building, longer than most of the executives combined. I built systems under budget and ahead of schedule. I trained half the engineering team, fixed code the CTO didn't understand, and wrote the encryption framework they later renamed Echo Frame, like it was summoned by some divine engineer. They never really saw me, only the results, which frankly was fine. You learn how to work in the shadows when every meeting room smells like Axe body spray and unspoken condescension. By the time I handed over my resignation, I'd already wiped my name from the company wiki. My photos, gone, email, set to auto-delete. My final push to the server didn't carry my initials. It carried a signature hash that only one internal tool could verify, and that tool was already deprecated by the time I left. I had been phasing myself out for months. Quietly. My only request? A rider. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even long. Less than a page. Nestled in the standard IP retention section, subclause 14.3.8, where most legal drones stop reading because their salad order just arrived. It was buried beneath a sentence about escrow control during transfer of controlling interest. I didn't bold it. I didn't need to. Legal's junior associate skimmed it, blinked twice, and said, "Huh, clever." Then she stamped it. No severance, no options. Just a clause. That night, I walked out through the side entrance near the dumpsters, same way I used to sneak smoke breaks during 80-hour build weeks. I didn't look back, didn't take my office plant or that stupid engraved mug they gave me for 5 years of dedication. Left it all. Because I knew the house was about to be sold. The board had started whispering about growth stage capital and strategic partnerships. They brought in consultants with hollow eyes and tighter suits. You can feel it when a company's soul is being measured in quarterly growth charts. I wasn't going to wait for the reorg memo or the passive-aggressive realignment talk. So I made my exit look like defeat. I let them think I was burned out, that I'd taken up yoga or pottery or whatever they thought women did when they lost their edge. I even left behind a fake Gmail with an out-of-office reply that said I was exploring new creative ventures. Let them picture me knitting somewhere in Maine. The truth? I was anchoring myself to the one thing they never truly understood. Echo Frame wasn't just code. It was scaffolding. Every API, every user credential, every shard of encrypted data sat inside a framework that recognized one thing above all else: ownership. And ownership, according to my clause, had conditions. You could replace the team. You could rebrand the company. But you couldn't transfer the soul of the system without setting off the fuse. I didn't need a corner office. I needed a kill switch. And I had one. 6 months before the acquisition, someone posted a job listing. Looking for engineers fluent in legacy encryption frameworks, ideally with Echo Frame exposure. Legacy. That word always gets me. They said the system ran itself now. Self-healing protocols, modular patches, automated redundancy scaffolding, built to survive without its maker, which, to be fair, was true, because I built it to outlive me. But what they never figured out was that Echo Frame didn't just run. It listened. It was always waiting. From what I could piece together, the new CTO came from some flashy cybersecurity startup where they spent more time naming features than testing them. His LinkedIn banner read disrupt or die, which tells you everything you need to know about how little he respected things that worked. First thing he did was schedule a meeting titled Replatforming Echo Frame, Opportunities and Threats. They never learn. From my vantage point, an anonymous corner of the internet where I'd set up listener crawlers across their dev environment, I saw the comments pour in. This is spaghetti code. Why does the encryption protocol re-authenticate every 6 hours even on dormant instances? There's no admin override? WTF? Who the hell architected this thing? One dev replied with a skull emoji and said, "We call her the ghost." They thought they were clever. They thought the lack of documentation was arrogance or oversight. What they didn't realize is that Echo Frame wasn't made to be readable. It was made to be immutable. You don't explain the vault to the thief. The CTO's plan was to refactor the whole system, modernize it, trim, bloat, make it investor-friendly. What he didn't realize was that the code was cross-laced across 5 microservices, each of which had verification checkpoints hardwired into the original encryption schema. Touching one required syncing all 5, and syncing all 5 required a private key no one had seen since I left. That key wasn't in a file. It wasn't in a safe. It was a pattern buried inside a loop that self-modified every fiscal quarter, tied to the original articles of incorporation, and a timestamp that only triggered upon controlling interest shift. Which meant the minute they signed that contract, the pattern would resolve, and they'd be locked out. But they didn't know that. They thought they were inheriting a shiny, dormant gem. The CTO actually said in a board memo, "It's just code. If it breaks, we rebuild it." He might as well have said, "Let's take a sledgehammer to the power grid and hope nothing explodes." Watching them scramble gave me no joy, just confirmation. The new team had no idea what they were holding. They saw Echo Frame as a tool. I built it as a sentry. Every line of it was written to detect ownership shifts, privilege changes, and internal restructuring. That's why it had never needed a patch, because it already anticipated intrusion. They were holding the heart of the system and didn't even know it was still beating. And the moment they tried to cut it open, they'd hear it scream. It was supposed to be a victory lap. Polished shoes on marble floors, champagne flutes sweating in a sterile boardroom lit by screens projecting the company's new name. Raymond Strategic Systems. Even the font looked expensive. The owner sat at the head of the table, teeth bared in a smirk too wide for someone about to sign $375 million into motion. The lawyers were stacked 3 deep. Corporate counsel on one side, acquisition attorneys on the other, a neutral, third-party auditor dead center, flipping pages like a court magician. Everyone looked calm, polished, prepared, until my agent slid forward a single page. No fanfare, no cleared throat, just a subtle movement of his hand, as though passing a napkin at a dinner party. "If we could take a moment to verify the rider on asset 03B47, he said, voice low and practiced. Specifically, section 17.6. The owner, Carter Raymond, chuckled without looking up. "We already paid the lawyers for that. Let's not hold up the show." He was riding the high, thought he was charming, thought paperwork was beneath him now, an annoying obstacle between him and the congratulatory press release. But one of his attorneys did look. A middle-aged partner from Randall and Sloan, slicked hair, crow's feet, no-nonsense demeanor. He flipped back 3 pages, then 4, then blinked. He didn't speak right away. just stared at the claws, jaw tight, pupils narrowing like he was trying to read something that might bite him. Carter leaned over, still smiling. "What's the issue?" The attorney didn't answer. Not right away. He scanned the rest of the page, then whispered something to the junior associate beside him. She started typing furiously. My agent didn't press, just sat back, fingers laced, like he'd already seen this movie. Then came the flicker, a moment so small you'd miss it if you weren't waiting for it. The slight clench of the owner's jaw, the twitch in his lawyer's left eye. Fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just breathes different. "I'm going to need a moment," the lawyer finally said, standing with the claws still in his hand. Carter laughed again, but this time it came out wrong, thinner. "What is this? Some footnote?" The lawyer didn't answer. He stepped into the hallway, phone already to his ear. Inside the room, the energy shifted. One of the tech consultants leaned forward, brow creased. "Is this about Echo Frame?" he asked, already nervous. My agent nodded once. "Asset 03B47, he said calmly. "It's governed by a rider filed during the resignation of the asset's original architect. The clause states that upon transfer of controlling interest, defined as a change in majority ownership, the core IP rights revert to an external holding entity unless license renegotiation occurs in advance." "What the hell does that mean?" Carter asked, now visibly irritated. "It means," my agent said, "the minute this deal closes, Echo Frame no longer belongs to this company. It reverts. Automatically." Silence, not the good kind. On the projection screen, the new company logo hovered like a curse. Outside the glass, the attorney returned, pale, phone still in hand. He didn't sit. "We need to talk," he said to Carter. The celebration fizzled. The pens were still uncapped, the signature page halfway across the table. The ghost clause was alive, and it had just awakened. At exactly 2:41 p.m., Carter Raymond pressed the pen to paper. He didn't look up, didn't blink, just signed with the theatrical flourish of a man who believed the hard part was over. The room exhaled as if on cue. Champagne was already being poured. A junior associate snapped a photo, and someone clapped a little too early. "Done and dusted," Carter said, leaning back in his chair, arms stretched wide like a man who thought he now owned the sun. Somewhere behind the scenes, a transaction flag hit the Delaware corporate registry. Ownership changed hands. Control shifted. And deep within a secure escrow server housed in a sleepy Nevada data center, a process initiated. Rider 17 engaged. It didn't make a sound, didn't flash an alert. It simply executed. A single notification routed directly to the board's compliance inbox. Notice: Asset 03B47 has been reassigned per Rider 17. Effective immediately. Custodial control. Westwood LC activation. Trigger: controlling interest transfer. Timestamp 14/41/07. Access rights: suspended pending license agreement. The CTO was the first to notice. He'd been live monitoring the dashboards for post-integration anomalies. His words, not mine. 1 second, everything was green. The next, his console lit up red like a Christmas tree in hell. Critical error, encryption framework, ownership, mismatch admin rights, revoked. Please contact license owner to restore access. He blinked, refreshed, rebooted. Nothing. Back-end processes froze mid-cycle. Load balancers buckled. Access tokens expired en masse. The heart of the company, Echo Frame, had just shut its doors. He muttered something no one could hear and stood so fast his chair tipped over. "Why can't I access the core schema?" He barked into the room. 2 engineers nearby scrambled for their tablets. "We're locked out too. It says external license invalidation." Carter, still half standing, blinked. "What the hell is happening?" The board liaison looked up from his phone, pale. "Check your inbox." Carter fumbled with his device. His screen lit up with the same message, same timestamp, same new owner. "Custodial control, Westwood LLC." He looked up at my agent, who hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. "What is this?" Carter asked, voice sharp, rising. "What the hell is Westwood LLC?" My agent tilted his head just slightly. That would be her holding company. "You mean the ghost?" "She never left," he replied. "She just rewrote the rules." The room fell into a still, suffocating quiet. No one moved, because everyone realized the same thing at once. The centerpiece of the acquisition, the tech they'd built the valuation around, was no longer theirs. They didn't own the engine. They owned the chassis, the shell, the empty house. The soul had walked out the back door the moment Carter signed his name. The new owner didn't own the thing he bought. He just leased the illusion of it. Until now. The silence cracked first, not from Carter, not from the CTO pacing like a rabid dog near the whiteboard, but from the chair of the audit committee, who finally exhaled like a man trying not to vomit in front of investors. "This can't be happening," he muttered. "We just filed Form D. The valuation is based on an asset we no longer possess." My agent finished for him. Calm, even, surgical. Carter's voice went full tilt. "She doesn't exist. She resigned. She's not even on the damn cap table." The agent didn't flinch. He reached into his folio and slid one crisp, cream-colored document across the glass table. Not dramatic, not smug, just inevitable. Like gravity. "This," he said, "is the proposed licensing agreement. Per Rider 17's automatic activation clause, all administrative and custodial rights of EchoFrame now reside with Westwood LLC. This document outlines terms under which your organization may lease the engine under a renewable quarterly license." "You're joking," Carter snapped, but there was no conviction behind it. His voice had cracked mid-sentence. Everyone noticed. The CTO leaned over to glance at the document. His face went pale. 8.2 million a quarter? That's the introductory rate, the agent replied. Fair market value, indexed to your projected Series C earnings. Someone laughed, dry, broken. It came from the CFO, who was staring blankly at his tablet like it had just called him a failure. Carter leaned over the document like he could physically intimidate it into changing terms. "This is blackmail." "No," the agent said, still calm. "It's a lease. Breach of Rider 17's terms constitutes a willful violation of IP custodial law under federal code, which carries automatic penalties of triple damages, immediate forfeiture of related trade secrets, and a 10-year licensing ban from applicable technologies. Legal will confirm." Everyone turned to the head of legal. She didn't even look up. "It's airtight." That's when Carter's performance died. His shoulders dropped. His hand went limp on the table. For a man who'd just been celebrated as a visionary, he now looked like a kid caught cheating on an open book test. The board started whispering, snippets about fiduciary duty, investor exposure, clawback clauses. The air shifted. The celebration had mutated into a negotiation with a ghost. But my agent wasn't done. "Payment is due within 15 business days of license activation," he said. Late fees accrue daily. Any attempt to reverse engineer, clone, or replace EchoFrame within the leased environment will void the agreement and activate enforcement. Enforcement? The CTO repeated, voice barely above a whisper. My agent gave the faintest nod. Clause 22.3.4, Reversion Protocol. Someone at the far end of the table whispered, she turned the whole company into a tenant. That was it. That was the moment it clicked. I wasn't their ex-employee. I was their landlord. And the rent was due. The first headline dropped 2 days later. System malfunction freezes Raymond strategic rollout. Sources cite encryption lockout. Carter's PR team scrambled, pumping out a press release so hollow it might as well have been written on toilet paper. Minor integration delay due to technical inconsistencies within legacy code. Our team is actively resolving the issue. Bull. Behind the scenes, the truth oozed out like a cracked pipe under pressure. The CTO's access was still revoked. DevOps was running on fumes, unable to deploy without touching EchoFrame. And every time they tried to reroute, the framework flagged the unauthorized activity and self-throttled the environment back into read-only mode. It wasn't a glitch. It was enforcement. The clause had no wiggle room, no back doors. Not because I was vengeful, because I was precise. Because I knew this day would come, when someone with a champagne ego and a PowerPoint understanding of infrastructure would assume that silence meant weakness. He called a press conference the next morning. Carter stood there, sleeves rolled up like he was still the hero of this story, jaw tight as he read from the teleprompter. There is no threat to user security. We are simply modernizing older systems. Any interruptions are unrelated to the recent acquisition and have no impact on long-term growth. He didn't look up once, but his voice shook. Because internally, his investors were asking real questions now. Because 3 key accounts had paused their contracts until platform stability returned. Because engineers were whispering, asking if anyone had a contact number for me. That's when the term started circulating, ghost architect. It started on Slack. Someone posted a screenshot of the access denial message. EchoFrame administrative rights revoked. Custodial license enforced by Westwood LLC. The comment thread below exploded. Who the hell is Westwood LLC? She's back. Did anyone ever meet her? Ghost Architect is real. She never left. She's just watching. Someone even changed the company wiki to include a photo of an empty chair under the Founders section. Caption: You don't erase a ghost, you just stop seeing her. Within 72 hours, the myth was louder than the man. Internal compliance had run the clause through every legal interpretation they could invent, and came up dry every time. Rider 17 stood, immutable, signed, triggered, enforced. All the control Carter thought he'd bought came with a key he didn't possess, and a lock that answered to no one but me. They could keep the company, keep the name, the branding, the empty applause, but the engine that ran it, they rented that now. From a ghost. The final version of the lease landed on Carter's desk Monday morning. 49 pages. Clean. Precise. Every term designed like I wrote code. Brutal in its logic, but fair in its outcome. $8.2 million per quarter. No renegotiation for 5 years. Any breach triggers full revocation. Support not included. Licensing wasn't optional, it was survival. EchoFrame wasn't a plugin. It was the spine of the entire company, and without it, Everything above it crumbled like a luxury condo built on matchsticks. The board met in a closed session. Legal said sign it. Compliance said sign it. The CTO didn't say anything. He just stared at the floor like it had betrayed him. Carter didn't speak for 5 full minutes. Then finally, in a voice that tried very hard not to shake, "We'll fight it." My agent, ever patient, placed a second document on the table. "This," he said, "is a judicial opinion from a similar enforcement case in 2019. The plaintiff attempted to bypass custodial transfer protocols on a proprietary framework. The result was triple damages and a permanent injunction from developing similar tech. They lost their company. And their shirts." Carter glared. "This is extortion." The agent didn't even blink. "No," he said. "This is ownership." The room went quiet again. Across the country, one of the lead investors had already sent a formal inquiry. Was this clause disclosed during due diligence? It wasn't. A second message followed 20 minutes later. "Did your counsel review legacy IP riders?" They hadn't. Carter started sweating. His collar felt too tight. His $12,000 suit looked like a costume now, draped over a man who'd confused charisma for competence. "You don't understand," he snapped, pointing a finger at the agent like a spoiled kid demanding a refund. "She's gone. She quit. She gave this up. She doesn't get to come back and hold us hostage." That's when the agent looked up for the first time, really looked at him. "You laughed at her," he said, calm, icy. "You called her a ghost." Carter went still. The agent leaned back in his chair, adjusting his cufflinks as if this whole mess was just another Tuesday. "She wrote the system." And just like that, the weight shifted again. She hadn't been fired. She hadn't been erased. She'd simply stepped back, turned the key, and waited for someone arrogant enough to think silence was weakness. Now the lawyers were hers. The framework was hers. The terms were hers. And the company, despite the marble floors and the billion-dollar logo and the smug press junkets, was standing on borrowed code. Leased from the one person they could never replace. Because no one fired her. No one could. The coffee was terrible, but the corner table faced the morning sun, and the place had one thing I cared about. Quiet. My agent slid into the seat across from me. No rush in his movements, no folder this time. Just a single sheet in a thin leather envelope. "Final version," he said, laying it on the table between us like it was nothing more than a receipt. I unfolded it. Read it once. Read it again. Everything was as we planned. Quarterly licensing locked at $8.2 million indexed to growth. 0 equity concessions. 0 creative interference. Legal custody of EchoFrame retained by Westwood LLC until 2037. Automatic renewal. Termination clause? There wasn't one. I signed. He didn't smile. Neither did I. This wasn't a victory. It was just the inevitable. Some people win by building empires, others by burning them down. I won by making sure the blueprints were mine, etched in ink, law, and code. Not ego. I sipped my lukewarm coffee and glanced at the phone I hadn't touched since he sat down. One unread headline stared back at me. Carter Raymond steps down, citing health reasons amid tech licensing controversy. The photo beneath showed him leaving the company's main office in a hoodie and sunglasses. The same man who laughed on stage. The one who clinked champagne glasses and called me a ghost. They could scrub my name from every wiki. Archive every photo. Pretend I'd never sat at that table, wrote that line of code, locked that protocol. But they couldn't function without me. Not without the system I left behind. And now, not without paying for it. I gathered the paper, slid it back into the envelope, and stood. No one in the coffee shop looked up. No music swelled. No applause came. Just the quiet hum of machines around me still running. Mine. I didn't haunt the company. I just designed it so I couldn't be erased.